All right, I'll call this meeting of Housing, Health, and Public Safety to order. Tonight on the agenda, we've got the chronic nuisance ordinance that we've been discussing for several months now. Chris, I know you went to the building department to find out if there was anything that they would like to add to help them out. Was there anything that you came up with, any notes?
Yeah, so talking to Mr. Brinkmeyer in Health Building Department, we just kind of discussed kind of what they see a lot, what calls they get, what do they notice when they're out, what are things they send letters out for, like those events that occur. And what it kind of came down to is one thing they see a lot of is paint, like chipping paint on buildings, buildings that aren't fully painted that need to be finished, handrails that are like broken, loose, falling, safety issues like that, porches and steps that are damaged, rot, things of that nature, missing addresses on showing on the buildings, junk cars, which also I believe falls under the health department, probably more so maybe under the health department than building department.
Correct.
Garages, just being like holes in the roof of garages, in the walls, stuff like that. Leaks on the interior of buildings, properties, apartment buildings, stuff like that they're invited in by tenants. Downspouts, whether they're missing, broken, stuff of that nature. Chimneys, like we had an incident where, the chimney is kind of leaning, could fall, or crumbling, broken, things like that. Windows, as far as broken glass hanging out of the windows, window frames rotting, causing, safety issues of that nature as well. And a lot of this is in the ordinance that pertains to the building department as far as their enforcement goes. So I guess like we've done other ordinances, or not other ordinance, but in the nuisance ordinance for other departments like the police and the building department, I think the amendment would just be adding it in, those items into the definitions.
Okay.
And then citing that ordinance as it were.
Are these all separate?
Yeah, these are just.
Are they all separate ordinances?
No, I mean, it would be under the same ordinance. There's a piece of paper that he was kind of reading off of, like kind of just like an issue list, I guess, that they have. Like you can come in and fill something out, or kind of a list that they have that we can get. That would probably help. But my thing with this is what I was talking to him about is that we're going to have to figure out are these things that we want in there? Are these nuisance activities? Do they bring the thought of, all right, this property's a nuisance because their paint's chipping or their handrails messed up or the chimney issue, which that could be a severe safety issue. There's some of them that are more, I guess, in my opinion, important or, I guess, more fitting for this ordinance than others. But, yeah, that's something that we're going to have to figure out which ones, if not all of them, do we want to include. So, and how do we want to include them? Do we want to be like, all right, they send a letter out saying, hey, get this done like the health department does, first notice, second notice, third notice. Are we going to count each individual one of those? Are we going to count just when they cite the mayor's court or what have you? So that was what I found with the building department.
Okay. I went and attempted to speak with the health department. Brian was in a meeting, I guess, at the time when I stopped by. He did call me, and he essentially said that he would like to see this ordinance, the time frame moved to 1.5 years versus 6 months.
So longer time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Before I couldn't get back a hold of him on the main number, and he called from an unknown number when he called me. So I guess my response to him would have been, hey, if people get hit for some of these nuisance, under the nuisance ordinance through the 6 months, they can go to the appeals board, request a stay at that time, which puts a halt to everything. And then they can come back to the appeals board and say, hey, we've taken care of it. Here's, what we've got from the health department showing proof that we've taken care of this, and then everything goes away.
Yeah.
that's,
just in my thinking, the year and a half versus what it is now would be just, it's more of a time that to accumulate those dings, so that this ordinance is, I guess, more effective. So that's something I guess we have to consider. Do we want to lengthen that time out, or do we want to lower the number of
I think we,
occurrences, or do we want to keep it as
I think
it
we
is?
keep it as is, because again, if the health department's working with people, like they say that they do, which I believe they do, absolutely. That's something that, again, we can say, come to the appeals board, show them that you're working with the health department to get this resolved, put a stay on it, and then come back and say, hey, I've got it all fixed up and we're good to go. Here's a letter from the health department, whatever it may be, because I know they send letters out saying that things have been accomplished and completed.
Yeah.
And that this matter's now finished.
Yeah, and that's something where I tend to agree with you on there, like keeping it the same time frame, keeping it the same number of occurrences in that time frame, because as we kind of discussed meetings ago, all of us in here, and then even with residents like Mr. Weigert here, various other people that from renter organizations, stuff like that. With this ordinance, we're not out trying to like harass people. We're not out trying to fleece people of their money, stuff like that. What we want to try to do is raise the standard of living around here, the standard of upkeep on properties, being neighborly, not being, a nuisance to your neighbors and community around you. So keeping the number of dings the same, or I call them the dings, but the occurrences, and keeping the timeline of those occurrences happening the same, I agree with that. I've worked with Mr. Shelby quite a bit on some calls I've gotten about properties, people have problems with like grass, trees, stuff like that. And, he's kind of explained it that he will reach out to them, give them a first notice. And anytime the resident calls or reaches out to him and they say, hey, I'm just having some trouble, I want to get this done, that done, he works with them and he gives them that timeline. And if they don't, get it completed by that timeline, then it kicks back in and says, hey, all right, now you're on this process. So I think that's important because we do have a high percentage of elderly people in Norwood, and we have a high percentage of people in Norwood that might, be disabled for whatever reason, that maybe want to get these things done but don't have the financial means or the physical means. And working with these people is going to be key in this. So we're not harassing people, and we're not, going after some of these people that just they want to get it done, but they just don't have the resources around them for whatever reason. So, and I explained to Mr. Brinkmeyer and Mr. Shelby, that's why we do have the appeals board, in case there is a foul up. We're all humans. There's a lot of human,
There's a lot of moving
interaction,
parts.
in this ordinance. So things are going to get mistaken, and we're going to have to, be diligent on that. But, yeah, I would agree, just to wrap it up there, that keeping the things, the occurrences and the timeline the same, I think is going to be important. We already did a lot of work and debating on that. So that's just my opinion. I don't know if Mr. Bonzo agrees with that or.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to turn over to you.
No, it's totally fine. I'm good either. I'm good either way here. I think you all know how I kind of feel. I do think the ordinance I think we thought it has more potential than it really does. I think by the time, I think we're seeing that by the time we get to the point where we can use it, it's just going to be hard to get any property to that point. Not saying we shouldn't have it, but I think that it's not going to be the magic bullet that we once thought, and that's okay. We can try to figure out where to go next, but yeah, whatever's going to make it most effective, I'm fine with. I don't have a.
And I agree with that. It's not going to be a cure-all. It's not what it's meant to be. It's meant to.
I'm hoping to at least see it, at least start up in action, because we can't kill something before it even gets started. You know what I mean?
I know we've all had a lot of, and especially in your time doing this job, I know we've all had a lot of people reach out to us saying, hey, this property is just not doing what they're supposed to do. And it's a headache, it's a hassle. But my main vision for this ordinance when we started putting it together and talking about it was not just those kind of, residential little properties here and there. It's the bigger ones, the ones that are the hassles, the ones that, like Quality Inn, for instance. That should not be sitting there allowed like that. That's egregious. I think we could have been using this ordinance on that if we had something like this in the past to speed that process up there. Hey, figure out what you're doing with it, or we're going to be fining you.
And
You know,
and I think-
that's kind of what my inspiration with this ordinance was. Are we gonna get some, small residential properties, apartment units, stuff like that? Yeah, and I believe, with the penalties in this ordinance, most people, 90% of people, they get a letter, are gonna be like, whoa, let's figure this out, let's fix it. And really, the absentee landlords, the ones that aren't here, those kind of properties, I think this is what, is gonna be key in kind of turning that around.
And when we were working with the law department, you had brought up the fact of making it complete civil. And looking more into that, that kind of helps speed that process up a little bit. And that's why I started embracing that a lot more versus going to the criminal side, because you go to the criminal side and it extends that time frame that you can do anything to that property, meaning take it over through the court. But if we start stacking these fines on somebody like Quality or Perry and Derrick, now we've got more teeth to go to the court and say, let's throw a lien on here, Whereas if we kept it as criminal,
Right.
we'd be sitting there a little longer. So that was a good move to turn it civilly instead of criminal, because I think it gives it a little more teeth when we get it moving.
Yeah.
I think the one other thing that we need to look at is maybe adding a section in there for somebody like the health department and somebody like the building department, basically laying out how their fines would work or how their issuance would work. So let's say the health department goes out and cites somebody for their grass being too tall, and
Are you just kind of talking about like, just
So
maybe,
like
some,
that
maybe
green-
some visible literature
So
somebody
that-
can read just on their process they have now, like first notice, second notice?
so let's say they get, they end up getting 3 notices, right, before Public Works goes and cuts the property.
Yeah.
Right? After the 3rd notice, that's 1 ding under this ordinance.
Yeah.
Instead of doing every green piece of paper that gets stuck up there
Right.
is 1, because now you're at 3 within a 6-week period.
Yeah. And what that does there, that lets the process that we already have work, And like I was explaining to Mr. Brinkmeyer in the building department, we were talking, I said, hey, we're not trying to say anybody's not doing their job or anybody's not doing a good job. We're trying to take that work you guys already are doing and take that data and use it for this extra thing we're trying to do. Not create more work for everybody, but take that work that's already there, those numbers that are already there and all that, and use it in this kind of umbrella that covers all of these ordinances and allows for us to get that civic penalty aspect of it to kind of take this up a notch, to kind of say, hey, guys, what you're doing is not right. We need it done, or else you're going to pay a fine. So, and I think that talk was kind of like, that was a beneficial talk, just to kind of let everybody know kind of what this is about. And I think when we meet again, which I imagine will be kind of soon with the new SSD involved, just to get him in the loop, it may be explaining that further, saying, hey, guys, I know we dragged you here, but it's not like, a scold session of, hey, you guys aren't doing what we need you to do, blah, blah. We're trying to take that work you guys are already doing, centralize it in a database, use it, on a different kind of level than what we currently are. So I think that's something that's important. And, with the building department, health department did do something like they put that process like on some literature that maybe is on their door. I'm not sure if they do currently. I haven't seen any. Just so residents kind of are aware of how that works, like a first notice, second notice, whatever. I think that would be beneficial too, just to, knowledge is power. And I think more residents kind of know the process, and they'll be more apt to kind of follow it. Just my kind of thoughts over here.
So what I'll do is I'll talk with the health department again
Yeah.
and find out how they cite or notify, I guess, certain, what we have in there currently. So it would be the abandoned car, the trash or rubbish on the property.
Well, just from my talks with Mr. Shelby, and it seemed like everything was kind of uniform there, and the health department was first notice,
So they usually
Second
get 3
notice.
notices for everything.
final notice, which is the third notice, and then after that you get cited in mayor's court. And I believe, he gives 10 to 14 days between notices.
Okay. I would assume that's the same way with the building department.
Yeah.
So I'll see if I can get something up to say that 3 notices equals 1 occurrence.
Yeah, because at that time, they would be getting cited at mayor's court. So if you want to put just mayor's court citation or 3 notices, I mean, I'm not sure. That would probably be more of a law department kind of input on the verbiage. But, so, health, or building department, health department, Mr. Bonzel, I think you had some stuff on the software you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. So, one of the items that I was kind of tasked with was to look at the different software solutions that are out there for city code enforcement. And there are many different options that are out there. Some of them are more comprehensive solutions that can handle things like business licenses, so it could be like food permits and all those other things that businesses have to get licenses for. Building permits, code enforcement we've talked about, planning, even like permit routing, kind of getting it to the right workflow in the back end to help route that. And then there's other forms that can be created as well for some of these that can help increase operational efficiency. I could see potentially like a yard sale permit on there, like you wouldn't maybe even need to come because you can request it online and we'll just mail the permit to you. So things like that we could do for the future. And then some of them are much more focused on the code enforcement side. So they just really are, that's their specialty. So there's multiple solutions depending on where the city wants to go. The three most popular that I could find, one of them is called SmartGov, all one word. And all of these are one word, even though it sounds like 2. But SmartGov. The next one is GovPilot, and then the last one is City Reporter. And but there's other solutions out there too. So there could be other things. And kind of from my opinion here, just from the committee standpoint. So just knowing kind of what's out there. It's going to be hard for us, not being the city administration, right, to really, try to identify even just like the top couple that we would want. So what I would recommend that we do is, report out that, hey, that there are solutions out there. And if we would like to see, potentially we could say in the report that we would like to see the city explored to see if, something like that is feasible and or would, add value to the city. Because I'm not doing the job of the health inspector. I'm not doing the job of the building and the housing inspectors or the building inspector, Mark Reed. So they're going to kind of have a little bit more of an idea of like, could this, truly add value? I personally believe it would, especially, they could write something up and literally have a mobile printer in the car and put it on the door right there that day. So, people have it and it can be done. Or there could be workflow set up where things get mailed out, so they can have a queue of things that just print out as soon as they get back to the office, and they can send letters instead of now. I think they use pretty much like Microsoft Word to edit each letter that goes out to people. So to me, I don't know if that's the most efficient way to go. But anyways, those are out there, and I think when council gets their our software up and running, 'cause I think it's Civic Plus. I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is there anything on that since we're already doing? Is that kind of does this as well, or could do this?
Yeah, I didn't look. I specifically
maybe upgrading versus we got this software and now we got this software too. I think streamlining it into one would probably be
into
the best.
one software system.
Yeah, no, I mean if it does it, then I think that probably would be actually what they should look at first.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have, so we're Civic Clerk is the part that we have, and if we use C-Click Fix, that's also a Civic Plus platform. But, yeah, it does look like they've got, like Civic Rec, which I guess is like something that, the rec department could use, Civic Engage, Civic Ready. So I'm sure one of these probably does something that, so actually that's probably
that would be
the best idea.
That'd be really nice to just upgrade versus trying to get 2 different softwares and hope they're compatible. And as far as like the city buy-in and the administration buy-in, I mean, we've had several meetings and we've had several talks, and it just from my perspective, rewatching some of the meetings and being in them and having talked to several departments, and I don't think it's an issue of they don't like the ordinance or want the ordinance. I think it's more of a kind of an issue of communication and kind of an understanding of what our vision is. So I think when we like regroup, if we could do a better job maybe of like communicating it out and letting these departments know, hey, we like the job you're doing. We just want to use that data into this and just making sure we reestablish that and make sure they know. I think we'd have more buy-in. And, like this information is out there, they can go search it and find it. But I think if we kind of help do a little bit of that work and bring it to them and say, hey, this is here, we can do this, and it's going to be easier than we thought, I think we'll go a little bit to getting that buy-in as well.
No, it's a good idea. And I mean, and I can commit to when NOAA Powers shows or arrives, I think it's like November 15th or something like that. I'll send him an email just saying, hey, this is what we were looking at, something like this. And I'm sure though too, I mean, he's going to be probably one of the first safety service directors that we've had that actually has experience in kind of with administration, if you will, at another city. I mean, he wasn't like the city manager there, but Sharonville, but he was their director of HR.
He was in Middletown too, right?
Yeah, he's assistant law director in Middletown.
Yeah, so they have a very similar ordinance there too. So hopefully, he might have some insight on how they kind of did it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, and even just like if we want to look at more reworking, I mean, I feel like the process is kind of broken right now. I think we all feel like there's just broken, but I don't think any of us really know exactly what needs to happen. So hopefully he'll have some perspective and can see a vision there that can at least give us some better direction forward.
Yeah, so I think taking the building department ordinances, including that, putting those items in definition, I think that's the amendment. I don't think we need to adjust the scales or anything like that, and just kind of move forward with it. And if, when we do get all this together, we get our ducks in a row, and we kind of see it's not working, then I think that would be kind of time to look at that scale or the number of occurrences to see if it's something. If we still have a problem like we have now, then maybe that's something we need to look at.
Yeah, and I mean, if we have to up the number, we can up the number. If we have to up the months, we can up the months. But, we have a starting point that I'm hoping that we can at least get to. I don't like to use the word for something like this as a beta test, but, something that we could start to see if it's actually going to get some steam moving.
Yeah.
But, we got to get everybody on board to do this.
Yeah. And I think that next meeting we have, which I was going to ask, do we want to schedule that now, knowing that Mr. Powers ain't going to start till the 15th? Do we want to schedule something maybe that following week? I mean, I know we're coming up, at the end of this cycle, as it were, with the election tomorrow, but getting him kind of involved.
We can schedule something on the 22nd.
That's getting close to Thanksgiving, man.
I mean, it's the week of Thanksgiving.
I like my food, man.
It's the week of. It's way before it. It's a Monday. He starts the 15th.
All right. I'm cool with that if everybody else is.
That gives him about a week to go over.
But what we're going to look at there is vacations and stuff like that, if people are off for Thanksgiving that week or
I mean, even if it's just a meeting with him, because we met with most everybody else. So just check kind of meeting with him to get his lay, and it'll give him about a week to look it over.
All right. I'm cool with that.
All right. Anybody else have anything?
No. I mean, just make sure in that meeting that we make sure, we're communicating, a little bit more clearly, I guess. And because, I mean, these people coming in there to those meetings, I feel like there's some tension. And I think that tension was maybe them feeling like they're going to get critiqued and analyzed or in some way. Just making sure that, hey, that's not what we're here for. We're here to see how we can get this going and,
Right.
Smooth sailing kind of way. Mr. Weigel, you want to make some comments?
Well, I can throw some 2 cents in here.
Well, as much as I want to hear, I know the people at home would probably enjoy hearing too.
Thank you for giving me time to comment. Thank you for all you guys hard work on this. A lot harder than I thought it was going to be for you. As you look at software, some possibility for owners to get data we found out there was and we used it to evict a lady that she had her boyfriend had moved in at 2055 Mills, and they had a whole bunch of calls and we didn't even know it. And my manager lives right down the street and happened to see him there one night, stopped and talked to an officer. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've been here like 6 times in the last month." We're like, well, of course now we evicted her, so we've abated the problem, which we would always do, but we didn't know until. So I'm not here really asking for that because you guys have a pretty big task in front of you at this point. But as you're rolling and you're trying to get things going, that's something to think about. That's what's always been my fear, that I'll just be blindsided by something that I never even knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So that,
And I think that's where those letters, that where we decided to split it in half and say, once you get to that halfway mark, those letters get sent out. Hopefully, I don't know where those letters would go for you, but
we get
hopefully
all the letters you send.
hopefully you'll be able to see those and say, okay, I'm at this mark, what do I need to do to fix this? And
And
then,
really, anything but police calls, I get letters. I mean, I've had health department orders for things, and, you know, none of them have been my fault, but, you know, I fix them right away, period. The same with the building department.
and
If
that's-
there's a gutter coming loose,
that's one thing we're hoping with this ordinance, is that all the departments will be involved, so that if something kicks off with this ordinance, you'll know it's a police run, it's a health run, it's a building department, it's, you know, whatever department it was for, whatever you got hit with over the, you know, what are you, you're 10 plus, so.
well, that's just on my biggest building. I have small buildings too. But either way,
I mean, let's say you're at your halfway mark, you'll be able to see, because on that warning letter, it lists out what section it was with the definition of it as to what was violated. So if it's a police issue, you'll be able to see that right off the bat.
thank you. And
So
that's
that's-
definitely moving in the right
well, that-
direction, but if I had it in real time,
Yeah,
or
so
a
that's
little
something,
closer.
that's something that I know when we worked together before, you were saying you had trouble going up to the police department and getting,
Yeah, it's very
Kinda
hard for
sheets,
them.
yeah.
They would
So-
print it out.
so I don't think I don't think that there's the ethics are behind it to get like a software where you can search the address and see. I think there's privacy issues there. But if they're, you know, get with Chief Kramer and kind of seeing, hey, is there a smoother way that anybody can go up and you got to show that you own the building, obviously, maybe. Say, hey, can I get all the stuff, you know, info on this property for the last 6 months, or whatever, just to kind of see.
And I think that depends on their CAD software. You know, when I was doing it, I could literally go into my CAD software, type in the address, and it would bring up every call for service, every report, every arrest that was made at that address.
Right.
I mean, it literally brought up everything for that address all the way back to the time that we started that CAD system.
And I know too, when we talked last, you had a printed out sheet of kind of runs, and
Yes,
we went
probably
through
what you said.
Yeah, we went through them together. So it's obvious you were able to get them somehow. Well, I mean, if we can kind of talk Chief Kramer and see if a better way exists to make it smoother, I think all parties would enjoy that, because that would probably mean better software that they're working with too. So
It could be. I know they're all still trying to get used to that, because they're,
Yeah.
2.5 or 3 months into
Right.
it?
I'm not complaining. You guys are doing great. Just keep pushing. The only thing, I mean, obviously, I'll get it. I'll get it no matter what. If I got to flag down an officer in the street and say, please help me, and he would, or she would. But the easier it is for me to get it, the better I'm going to be able to react.
Correct.
You know,
Right.
is all.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
eventually they'll get to that. There'll be a porthole in one of your software things you're working on, or there'll be something where they could easily click and email it to me, you know, once they knew that you were the proper party, something like that. But
And you know, that's something, as we start moving along, we might add to this, is email as well, versus just the certified mail. If we have an email address on file, you know, where you shoot the email out and the certified letter, might be something that we look into. But then again, that's something that we kind of want to look at after we start getting this rocking and rolling.
that's exactly, I didn't really want to push you.
One step at a time now.
One step
I
at
feel
a
like
time.
part of the
Baby
pushback,
steps.
other than the communication, is that this is a big monster.
Yeah.
This is a beast of a thing to try to manage track. So the easier we can kind of make it on the administration, and the better we can communicate, like the needs, the wants, and the ins and outs, I think the better we're off we are. So.
Yep. I agree.
So, meeting 22nd, 7:30 here.
Yes.
Mr. Bonzel?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah.
All right. With that, I'll adjourn this meeting and call it a night.
Great.